Broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California. Your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Today marks the 74th anniversary of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, one of the most stunning American military catastrophes in our country's history, and a moment that signaled a new era for our republic. The casualties were stunning. 2,042 Americans were killed, 1,247 wounded, and most of the Pacific Fleet took heavy damage. The nation was in a state of shock. According to historian Max Hastings, in seeing the wreckage of Pearl Harbor in the aftermath of the attack, one soldier said, "We were flabbergasted by the devastation. The water was covered with oil. Fires were burning still. Ships were resting on the bottom mud. Superstructures had broken off and fallen. Great gaps loomed where magazines had exploded. Smoke was roiling up everywhere. For sailors who had considered these massive ships invincible, it was a sight to be seen but not comprehended. We seemed to be mourners at a spectacular funeral." Well, you know, in the aftermath, in the days following that devastating December 7th, 1941, FDR brought the country together, not just with words, but with action. He set America on a course to ultimately win the war against incredible odds. We were not engaged at all with the Japanese, at least militarily. And we had to somehow figure out a way to strike back at the heart of our enemy when our fleet had been decimated. And you know, when you play a speech, if you listen to the words of FDR and his Day of Infamy speech, and you contrast that to what Barack Obama said, it is as if we are a different country. When FDR was speaking, people craned their heads to hear. They sat around radios in living rooms and in restaurants and bars and places of work. And they hung on every word the president said. And now, if anybody watched Obama, God help him, because it was so pathetic. It was so bad. It was so beneath the par for any president. I have never heard a more lackluster, listless, pathetic performance. And I'm not saying this because I don't like Barack Obama. I always want our presidents to pull the country together. I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat. I think if you're a listener to this show, you know that. And we're going to play you some of Obama's speech. He can't string together any set of phrases where I believe that he actually cares. At no point am I convinced that he has any conviction over what he is saying whatsoever. And that's a really scary thought, especially when you combine it with his attorney general, who has declared war on free speech and said, "No, I am not going to go after the Muslim militants, the Islamic extremists, the jihadists or jihadis. I'm coming after you. If you say one word that I can ascribe to being encouraging violence toward quote unquote Muslims, I'm going to arrest you and throw you in jail." I'm not making this stuff up. And we have a clip. I don't know if we've got it ready. Sean, if you're there, tell me if I can play a little bit of this. Yeah, let's go ahead and roll this, because I rather than me trying to convince you she said it, you can hear it in her own words.
The rise of the internet, the ability of people to issue hateful speech of all types from the anonymity of a screen is something that increases that rhetoric. Now, obviously, this is a country that is based on free speech, but when it edges towards violence, when we see the potential for someone lifting that mantle of anti-Muslim rhetoric, or, as we saw after 9/11, violence directed at individuals who may not even be Muslims, but may be perceived to be Muslims. And they will suffer just as well, just as much. When we see that, we will take action.
When we see that, we will take action. Now, mind you, these are the people on whose watch a jihadi bride who was, we're now finding out, this Tafshin Malik was radicalized, according to her family, during her time in college in Pakistan. So she was a radical Islamic jihadist. Now, I'm going to define that for you because we're going to use that term on the show a lot, Islamic jihadist, or that my shorthand is simply jihadi. And these people were the jihadis next door. How did they get next door? That's really the question. And I'm going to tell you, after what I have seen with this entire thing unfolding, I don't know if we're ever going to get the answer. You have a president of the United States who doesn't even bother to come here, never came to San Bernardino. Did anybody notice that? Obama, who pretends to be president of the United States, we've just had perhaps the most significant terrorist attack on U.S. soil since 9/11. And Obama cannot be bothered to fly Air Force One. He can go to Hawaii to a golf course. He can go anywhere in the country. He can come out here to L.A. to raise money. But to hell with the San Bernardinians. He doesn't have time for us. Sean, I hope you have some kind of button, because I'm afraid I may cuss today. Can just feel it. I can feel it. I'm so incensed over the insanity. As a matter of fact, when we come back, I'm going to play you my response to Attorney General Loretta Lynch and her assault and her attack on the First Amendment under the guise of hate speech. Hey, we'll take a quick break. 323-746-TALK is our number. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. When I heard Attorney General Loretta Lynch say that she was going to prosecute American citizens for speaking the truth about Islamic jihadists, I can't even tell you what my initial draft was and what I wanted to say back to her. I drafted an open letter and essentially read it, and I did so in a video, which, if we've got that ready, Sean, I want to bring that to the audience. Former California State Assemblyman Tim Donnelly here with an important message for Attorney General Loretta Lynch. You've threatened to prosecute Americans for speaking the truth about the Islamic supremacists who killed 14 Americans last Tuesday, instead of actually targeting the jihadis who have threatened to kill more. You're not an attorney general. You're an embarrassment. When you became attorney general, you swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and protect it from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And instead, you're using the power entrusted to you by the people to threaten the natural, civil, and constitutional rights of countless Americans. You don't uphold the rule of law, you're a threat to it. I'm not sure if you're an idiot or you're deliberately undermining the security of the United States. Whichever it is, you violated your oath. I don't know how you got this job, whether it was your anti-American ideology or your skin color or both. But I'm going to tell you one thing. We, the people of these United States, refuse
to be intimidated by you. You work for us. You rule at our consent, not the other way around. Your politically correct assault on free speech has empowered our enemies. Neither you nor Obama can identify the true nature of the evil, Islamic extremism, that claimed the lives of 14 innocent Americans, including some of my neighbors. So I don't expect you to be able to do anything about it. But this didn't happen in New York or Los Angeles. It happened in my backyard. So it's deeply personal. The people of my community are good and decent people, and they can't understand why you and Obama could go to Charleston, but you've turned your back on the victims of the San Bernardino Christmas Party Massacre. Several of the victims are from my own community, a tiny little mountain town in the San Bernardino Mountains. One man, Michael Wetzel, left behind 6 children. He went to school with one of my sons. He went to church with some of my friends. He coached soccer in a league administered by my wife. Everybody knows everybody in this community. More and more of us are beginning to question why the followers of the religion of peace have declared war on innocent Americans. We can't understand why you and Obama had no problem speaking out against the evil of a disturbed lone racist after 9 black Americans were murdered, but you can't even say a word about radical Islamists. Obama didn't ask for people to be patient. He didn't advocate that anyone wait for the facts to come out after Charleston. He didn't ask citizens to reserve judgment. In fact, with his rhetoric, he encouraged more hate. And you didn't threaten to prosecute those who threatened violence against Southern Americans because it didn't fit your political agenda. But you protect the mosques who protect the jihadis. If you were an American who loved this country, you'd put the mosques on notice. You tell them, if you don't turn over the extremists and the jihadists within your midst, then we'll set the FBI on you. We'll turn your mosques upside down. We'll make your lives a living hell until you rat out those who have declared war on America. But instead, you threaten the family and friends of the victims of your failure to identify and prosecute those who've sworn to kill anyone who doesn't pledge allegiance to their insane jihad. Well, I'm putting you on notice. If you don't go after the Islamic jihadis next door, we will. The only good jihadi is a dead jihadi. And the next jihadi to rear his or her ugly head in my backyard and point a weapon at me and my friends will get a .45 hollow point between the eyes. So if by refusing to be the next victim in the war the Islamic jihadis have declared on us somehow makes me an advocate of violence, then bring it on. Come and arrest me. I'm not hard to find. And then you can explain to the American people why we are the target of your wrath, not the murderous bastards who slaughter the innocents, even at a Christmas party, all in the name of the religion of peace. I'm former California State Assemblyman Tim Donnelly. Godspeed.
And there you have it. I'm not used to playing clips of myself on this show, but I got ticked off. And just to go back and clarify to the definitions, a jihadi or a jihadist or an Islamic jihadist or a Muslim militant or an Islamic extremist, these are all terms that are being used to describe people who have sworn an allegiance to a caliphate, who have decided that they have a right to kill anyone who is not as purist in their religion as they are. I just want to make that clear. And I use that language throughout. Right now, I'm going to go to the phones and get your reaction. Give me your first name and city. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. Herb, Victorville. That's very powerful weather. Are you actually going to send that letter to the Attorney General?
Oh, I already sent it to her on Twitter.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I can only applaud you. I'm glad that we have officials like you, and I felt bad when you were not elected to this great state. Unfortunately, the tide be it, but perhaps you can do more for not only the people of California and your community, but maybe you can do a lot more for the American people throughout this great nation.
Well,
God
Herb,
bless and good luck.
First of all, thank you for your kind words. Second of all, I'm not an official anything. I'm a former California State Assemblyman.
Yes,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. But I do believe there are times when we simply need to stand up and speak the truth and push back, because what she's doing is she's threatening the First Amendment. You got Obama threatening the Second Amendment, and it's like, hey guys, you're looking in the wrong direction. That's all.
Yep.
Anyway, thanks for the call, Herb.
And take care. Take care.
I'll pick up another call here. Give me your first name and city, please.
Kurt in Hesperia, California.
Hi, Kurt. Welcome to the show.
Hey, just heard your little repertoire there on his little misguided speech last night. Boy, you put it down right. I think it's when it hits home that close. I think these guys live in a bubble. I think I either heard you or Rush or Hannity or somebody talk about it where, over there it's 3% unemployment. Their kids go to all these charter schools. They have no idea what's going on. They are so sheltered. And as far as Obama, I mean, how do you believe anything he says? Once he lied about I never trusted him before, but once he lied about the health care, usually once a person lies, they always lie. And then, it's like the thing of the boy crying wolf. And then when the wolf really comes and he says he's going to do this or do that, you can't believe anything he says. I don't know why these people on TV even have trouble calling him a liar.
It's funny. The New York Times actually put up a picture where people are essentially calling him a traitor. And it's extraordinary to see it in the New York Times. Now, they were doing it in the construct of a story criticizing our viewpoint and saying that, the biggest threat in the world is that we might be mean to Muslims.
What's wrong with that right now, I don't want to go against everyone, but like you said in that thing, about the mosque, if these guys aren't willing to turn over these people that they know have some radical ideas, well, eventually, this country that's full of guns, they're going to start taking the law into their own hands.
Well, we're going to have Kurt. I'm going to answer. I'm going to mute you and answer you as we go to break here. Thanks for the call, by the way. We're going to have Michelle Moons, who visited the San Bernardino Terror Mosque, and you will not believe their reaction when asked a few simple questions. Stay tuned, and if you're on hold, stay there. We'll bring your calls in.
Good evening. On Wednesday, 14 Americans were killed as they came together to celebrate the holidays. They were taken from family and friends who loved them deeply. They were white and black, Latino and Asian, immigrants and American-born, moms and dads, daughters and sons. Each of them served their fellow citizens, and all of them were part of our American family. Tonight I want to talk with you about this tragedy, the broader threat of terrorism, and how we can keep our country safe. The FBI is still gathering the facts about what happened in San Bernardino, but here's what we know. The victims were brutally murdered and injured by one of their co-workers and his wife. So far, we have no evidence that the killers were directed by a terrorist organization overseas or that they were part of a broader conspiracy here at home. But it is clear that the two of them had gone down the dark path of radicalization, embracing a perverted interpretation of Islam that calls for war against America and the West. They had stockpiled assault weapons, ammunition, and pipe bombs. So this was an act of terrorism designed to kill innocent people. Our nation has been at war with terrorists since al-Qaeda killed nearly 3,000 Americans on 9/11. In the process, we've hardened our defenses, from airports to financial centers to other critical infrastructure. Intelligence and law enforcement agencies have disrupted countless plots here and overseas and worked around the clock to keep us safe. Our military and counterterrorism professionals have relentlessly pursued terrorist networks overseas, disrupting safe havens in several different countries, killing Osama bin Laden, and decimating al-Qaeda's leadership. Over the last few years, however, the terrorist threat has evolved into a new phase. As we've become better at preventing complex, multifaceted attacks like 9/11, terrorists turn to less complicated acts of violence like the mass shootings that are all too common in our society. It is this type of attack that we saw at Fort Hood in 2009, in Chattanooga earlier this year, and now in San Bernardino. And as groups like ISIL grew stronger amidst the chaos of war in Iraq and then Syria, and as the internet erases the distance between countries, we see growing efforts by terrorists to poison the minds of people like the Boston Marathon bombers and the San Bernardino killers. For 7 years, I have confronted this evolving threat each and every morning in my intelligence briefing. And since the day I took this office, I have authorized U.S. forces to take out terrorists abroad precisely because I know how real the danger is. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no greater responsibility than the security of the American people. As a father to 2 young daughters who are the most precious part of my life, I know that we see ourselves with friends and co-workers at a holiday party like the one in San Bernardino. I know we see our kids in the faces of the young people killed in Paris. And I know that after so much war, many Americans are asking whether we are confronted by a cancer that has no immediate cure. Well, here's what I want you to know. The threat from terrorism is real, but we will overcome it. We will destroy ISIL and any other organization that tries to harm us. Our success won't depend on tough talk or abandoning our values or giving in to fear. That's what groups like ISIL are hoping for. Instead, we will prevail by being strong and smart, resilient and relentless, and by drawing upon every aspect of American power. Here's how. First, our military will continue to hunt down terrorist plotters in any country where it is necessary. In Iraq and Syria, airstrikes are taking out ISIL leaders, heavy weapons, oil tankers, infrastructure. And since the attacks in Paris, our closest allies, including France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, have ramped up their contributions to our military campaign, which will help us accelerate our effort to destroy ISIL.
Obama, but
Second,
I'm going to pause in there because I want to bring on a special guest who went into one of these mosques, held a press conference where they were holding a press conference and wouldn't answer any questions. We've got Michelle Moon of Breitbart.com. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
Good.
Hey, so we've been listening to the Fearless Leader, which we'll get back to a little bit later on in the show, because I wanted to bring you on and talk about what happened when you guys went in there, because Obama's making it sound like, oh, yeah, the Muslims are all working with us, everything's great, but when I saw the video of that press conference, and we'll play a little bit of that during our interview, but I couldn't believe the fact they called a press conference and then refused to answer any questions whatsoever.
Right. Well, they basically what they did is they distanced themselves from this Syed Farouk. You had multiple leaders from the mosque come up and give statements. Initially, you had a couple of the teachers from the mosque, and then an individual that says he knew, had a somewhat knowledge of Syed, but that they didn't know each other well. He said he came for prayers, and they said he came for prayers, but anyone can come for prayer. And they really didn't want to seem like they were associated with this individual. And then they went on to talk about how, well, he just seemed disturbed and compared the incident to a Planned Parenthood shooting. So clearly they were trying to downplay what influence this Syed Farook's religion had to do with it, or with Islam, or this particular mosque. When this individual that knew Farook was asked, his name was Gasser Shahada, he said that this person, he just knew him a little bit, but what he knew of him, he wasn't radical, and that supposedly the FBI had come and asked this person that knew Farook a little bit about. We got the impression that the FBI asked about other people in the community. When journalists were asking him, the FBI questioned you, did they ask about anybody else here in the mosque or the community around? And he just said no comment, and got fairly agitated in journalists pressing for an answer on that. Clearly not something he wanted to answer.
Yeah, and we have some video that we'll play it when we get back from this next break. But I just wanted to lay out for you, because it's been very strange. We watched the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, come out and do a press conference literally within hours of the name being released, almost simultaneously with Syed Farook's name being released. He had Syed Farook's family there. They seem to be way ahead of the curve in terms of the information, ahead of what most of the journalists were releasing, even though law enforcement had been focused on this individual. But it's so strange how they brought out the brother-in-law at this press conference, and he wanted to express his condolences. Then they started asking him some simple questions like, hey, when was the last time you saw your brother-in-law? And, did you have any sense that he was involved in this kind of stuff? And he just refused to answer. And these guys, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, on the one hand, we're being told that there's Islam, there's Muslims, and they're all moderate, they're all following this religion of peace, and the president has instructed, as you heard in the clip, he was going to get to a little bit later on, where he just goes off lecturing Americans that we need to restrain ourselves, wait for the facts to come in, and realize this is not all Muslims, it's only this little group that have nothing to do with anything. When in the reality,
again, it's downplaying what people are asking questions, and they're trying to downplay the association between the fact that we're seeing this Islamic terrorism. They're trying to distance these individuals that perpetuate these terrorist acts from the religion, but then we go and we see that again and again that there is the association. So this mosque then refers journalists during this press conference when we were asking certain questions. They were referring journalists to, well, you can direct questions further on that to CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which has been tied to groups like the Muslim Brotherhood and whatnot. And so we look at that and you go, okay, well, this mosque now is referring people to CARE to answer further questions, not to mention, as you said, the press conference with the brother-in-law. And now we're learning that the father seems to have had knowledge of Farook having more extreme views than has been led on from other family members thus far.
Yeah. And let's get into that when we get back. Take a quick break here. 323-746-TALK. And look, I know a lot of you are on hold. We'll take your calls a little bit later in the show when we return to that topic. You're listening to the Tim Donnelly Show. We'll be right back.
Red, white, and blue. People shuffling their feet.
Hey, we are talking with Michelle Moons of the infamous website, Breitbart.com, infamous for getting the facts, getting the story, and never backing down from the truth. Michelle, you guys went to this mosque, and I want to roll a little bit of the footage that you had up in your article at Breitbart, and then get your comments on it.
And have the FBI or authorities come to talk to you guys? And if so, what do they want to know?
Well, they would do their jobs, and they know how to do it. So it's and
they came to interview you.
Yes, I did talk to they came to our house, and I did talk to one of the
FBI.
Yeah.
And what did they want to know?
Well, they were just doing their job, and that's and they have to do their job, and that's how it is.
Did they inquire about any other Muslims besides the name Saeed Farouk and Tashfeen Malik? Were there others they wanted to know about?
Well, I can't answer that right now.
Now, did he? So, just for clarity, you're choosing not to answer that, or you don't recall?
I don't know how to answer that, because when they answer something, then I can answer, but I cannot.
Can you tell me the names of the other Muslims in this community that the authorities were interested in?
Well, that's between the FBI and I can't answer that.
So is it fair? Just a second. Is it fair then to say that they are looking at some other parishioners or other Muslims in this community besides Saeed and Tashfeen? It's fair to say that they're looking at some other individuals in this community.
Well, I can't answer that. There's CARE. You know, there's a number that you can call. They know how to answer that well. So right now I can refer you to CARES, and they will be able to answer all your.
Okay, the FBI asked you to keep anything that they told you.
Let's pause it. Let's pause that right there. Michelle, they asked that question over and over again at this press conference you were at this mosque.
Yes.
And this is the mosque that Saeed Farouk attended. So it is completely, absolutely, utterly legitimate for American journalists to ask simple questions like we're asked, right? I mean, this didn't seem to you to be out of line.
No. In fact, it expected journalists should be asking these questions.
And the public's very interested.
They didn't want to answer. Right, absolutely. And it is a point of concern as we see questions come up as to whether or not there was a wider network. It's a completely valid question to ask. And the individual that said he sort of knew Farouk, he said he didn't know Tashfeen Malik, but that he wouldn't have known if she came anyway. I mean, they said she didn't come to that mosque, but at the same time, the individual that had familiarity with Farouk said, well, I would not have even recognized her because she would have been covered, so he wouldn't have even known if she.
Well, not only that, but the women go in a separate door from the men, so it's not like they walk in together. Right, yes. So perhaps she didn't go in, but at the same time, when they say she didn't, and then you have another individual from the mosque saying, well, I wouldn't really know if she did or not, and that anyone's welcome to come and pray, they say. So fine, but if they're going to say she didn't come, then say that, well, they can't really be sure because, or this one person that got up to speak said he can't really be sure. But either way, we have a situation where it is a completely valid question that should be asked is, are they investigating others within the community? And they came to the point where they didn't even want to answer that. I know one journalist was asking for names, but they wouldn't even answer whether or not the FBI was asking about other people, even without giving names. They said no comment. Right. And here's the thing.
It's a pretty simple question.
If you are going to figure out what is rotten within your community, and there's clearly something rotten within this mosque and perhaps many others, that you have a man who became religious, and then within 2 years of becoming religious with his new bride and everything, who we find out may have been radicalized at a college in Pakistan, you're out committing mass murder. You'd think the mosque would want to root that out among their congregation and point out other people and get rid of them. But they seem like they want to protect them.
Yeah, it's a very, they're giving an sort of an air of being transparent in allowing journalists to come into the mosque to do a press conference, and at the same time then shutting down any questions that actually mean something or actually would give us further information. And now we know, you mentioned that Tashfeen, the wife, had possibly been radicalized back in Pakistan, but now you have the father of Farouk saying that his son supported Islamic State ideology and was, quote, obsessed with Israel. We have a piece up on Breitbart that went up yesterday by Aaron Klein, and he talks about this interview that was done from an Italian newspaper called La Stampa, and so we hear that maybe Farouk was more radical than is being led on. That it was.
Well, I think he was a lot more radical than we were being led on. Michelle, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you for coming on today. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. And we're going to go straight to the phones. We've got a lot of people on hold, so I want to get to you one at a time here. We're going to start. Give me your name and city, please.
Yeah, Tim, this is Rick from Apple Valley.
Hey, Rick. How are you?
Good. If you'll indulge me, my phone battery's going dead, but I called to correct something I predicted the other day. You remember?
You're going to have to help me.
Well, it was just a few hours after this happened, I predicted that 2 out of 3 of them would be named Muhammad. The third one's middle name would be Muhammad. And so I got to correct that because I was wrong about that. None of their names were Muhammad, but their inspiration was.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Was. At any rate, to talk about how close to home it was. Well, it didn't dawn on me while I was talking to you how close to home it was. But when I got home, my wife reminded me that if our oldest son's mother-in-law would not have retired, she would have been in the middle of that. So
wow.
She had to come home from out of town to do funerals for the next couple of weeks. And I wanted to point out one other thing. I don't call them radicals because they're not radical. They're fundamentalists. And if they were Christians, Obama would be calling them fundamentalists. Now, he says don't tar everybody with the same brush. No guilt, group guilt. But he doesn't have any problem tarring our founding fathers or white people or anything else like his preacher up there from his old church. So he's a hypocrite of the first order.
Well, gun owners too. Anything that happens, it's the NRA's fault. It's Americans are able to get these powerful weapons of war, and it's all the NRA's fault and all you gun owners out there.
Well, all of us are going to save this country, is what's going to happen.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to arm ourselves. We're going to mentally prepare ourselves. We're going to study this threat, and we're not going to lie to ourselves about it for political reasons the way that our so-called leaders do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim.
Hey, thanks for the call, Rick. Yeah, I want to go to Christmas, who is calling from Yorba Linda. Christmas, welcome to the show. Now, you told me that you had a friend, unfortunately, who wasn't a close friend, but someone that you knew, an acquaintance, who was one of the deceased, and you wanted to share with us a little bit about her and the connection.
Yes, her name was Benita Bedbadel, an Assyrian Christian, not Syrian, but an Assyrian. Now, Assyrians were the minority Christians in Iran. She was born in Iran, but she was a minority Christian. And mind you, the Assyrians and Armenians were massacred in 1914 and 1918 by Muslims. Almost 1 million Assyrians were killed, including my grandfather including my uncle, including other members of my family, execution style because of being Christian.
Wow.
Benetta Bedbadel was one who fled Iran to be among her fellow Christians, to be in a land of free. She was a great member of community. She was a Christian who helped the church. She was a chemist, or actually she got her degree in chemistry. She helped Boy Scout and Girl Scout. She was a great member of community. She had 3 kids, a lovable mother, a wonderful wife, and truly it is a loss. Now, what is not funny is that she fled Islam because she was afraid to be persecuted by Muslims. But
so she fled persecution or potential persecution in Iran and came here to be free of that, and then perished at the hands of a jihadist, as my previous caller said, an Islamic fundamentalist, which may be a better term, but nonetheless someone who has sworn to kill pretty much anyone who is not as purist in their beliefs as the individual bearing the weapon.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
And the Assyrian Christians have been massacred many times. It wasn't just the 1914 and 1918. They were massacred in the 1930s. They've been killed here in Iraq. And they fled. But Hussein Obama is not allowing them to enter the United States because they're Christian. So it really hits home. I cannot believe I came to this blessed country. I love America. I am an American. And we came to this country because we felt safe. And I remember back in 1975 when I would talk about Islam, and when I would, because we were firsthand, we experienced the massacres and the killings by jihadists and by hating non-Muslims. I came to the United States, and I remember back then I would try to tell my fellow Americans who Muslims were and to be careful and not to befriend them. And I can tell you stories after stories as to my experience with Muslims who I have befriended. I friended someone who was in need. She was born here, an attorney. You looked at her, you would not even think that she was a Muslim. She attended Bible studies. She called me her sister. She went Christmas caroling. She did Christmas gift exchange. She participated in Easter egg hunting. She put a Christmas tree in her house. But I later found out that she was a terrorist sympathizer after 12 years of being friends. You know, my question is, Tim, how can you tell which one is and which one isn't? You certainly cannot tell by the way they look, by their accent, because many of them were born here. You cannot tell by their behavior. You cannot tell by them acting, their behavior or anything, but they have taqiyya. I'm sure you know what taqiyya is. Taqiyya
right. They have a license. Taqiyya is a license to lie about Islam to anyone as long as they are an unbeliever.
Yes. Basically, they outwardly condemn Islam. They will even eat bacon, smoke, have American friends, even talk negatively about Islam. But inwardly, they condone it. You know, there are many who, you know, Americans are wonderful people. They've never seen evil. They've lived in peace. When 9/11 happened, I know, and I know this for a fact, that many of them who were here for many years, many of Muslims, who were really happy about 9/11. These are the people who have received education here, who have homes, cars, they are wealthy, and they were really happy about what happened in 9/11. So how can anyone tell me or tell us who is a terrorist or who is a terrorist sympathizer? The difference between a terrorist and non-terrorist is one puts they put a bomb on themselves and one doesn't, but they condone it. So I really request that Americans be very, very watchful of who Muslims are, if they have their neighbors, to be watchful, to be careful. They are the best hosts when you go to their homes. They are the best neighbors. They will smile at you. They will talk to you. They will befriend you. And you would sit there and say, wow, these are some really nice people, so generous, so welcoming. But when the time comes, their Islam will surface. And I know this for a fact because I was born in an Islamic country. I have known many, many Muslims. I have had Muslim friends, neighbors, co-workers, and I know this firsthand. I'm not saying there aren't any good Muslims out there. I'm not saying that. I'm sure there are some really, really nice. But who can guarantee which one is really, really great Muslim? I can't for sure tell. I cannot
Well,
tell.
I do think, Christmas, that, first of all, thank you for coming on and sharing your experience. I do think that as we break down, if we ever get the truth about the individuals who perpetrated this, because it's so strange that the crime scene all of a sudden was wide open to reporters who trampled through there, so whatever evidence there was of any further connections to anyone else may be lost for all time. I don't understand that, and I smell a rat in a lot of this. But I do think that we need to understand that the next strike is not going to come 9/11 style. It's going to be the jihadi next door who is just as you described. And Christmas, I've got to take a break. Would you stay on? Because I'm going to take some other calls, but people might have questions for you. Would you be willing to stick around?
Absolutely.
Okay. We will be right back with more of your calls, questions. If you got a question for Christmas, but we're going to bring you up right after this break. Hey, welcome back to the show. We're on the phone with Christmas, who is an Assyrian Christian, someone who fled the persecution, fled an Islamic country to come to the United States for freedom. And we're going to be taking your calls as we go through this. Hey, welcome to the show. Give me your first name and city.
Hi, it's Shelby and Hesperia.
Hi, Shelby. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Well, one thing just aggravates me, and you brought up the great point earlier when you played yourself back, how the people up high, like Obama and Hillary, they always blame us for being the ones to be triggers or things like that, and they abuse these scenarios just to take more rights away from us. And Obama in his speech said that the police can't protect you all the time. In a speech about gun control, which is totally messed up, because if the police can't protect you all the time, shouldn't you be able to have means to protect yourself?
Wait a minute, Shelby. Slow down here, buddy. I mean, I thought Obama and the Black Lives Matter movement hate the cops, and they want all the cops dead. They want them to fry like bacon. Didn't they say that? I don't remember Loretta Lynch coming out and saying, we need to tone down the rhetoric against cops because not all cops are white and not all cops are killers and not all cops are bad guys. But no, they never apply the same thing they're pushing on us on themselves.
Yeah, it's just infuriating to be blamed for all the killings and the murders just to have more rights taken away and more means of protection taken.
Well, we're not going to have our rights taken away. We're not going to have our means of protection taken away, because here's the simple truth, Shelby, and I'm going to let you go because I want to get back. I want to get in all these calls here. Look, we're Americans, and if you make it illegal for me to carry a certain type of gun, there's a point at which Americans are just simply going to ignore the restrictions on their rights because they understand that their rights trump the law. And I think we're at that point. So I want to bring on Mike from Wrightwood. Mike, you're on with myself and Christmas. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. I mean, people need to understand that the Quran's very simple, and our enemies are very simple. We're either one of them and believe as them, or we're not. There is no in between. There's no moderate. There's no extremist. It doesn't exist. That's why it specifically states in the Quran that you can't take anything out. It's really, and it's really eaten me, because when I first came out here about a year and a half ago, I applied to be a reservist with the Sheriff's Department. Told them I didn't want a badge. How can you have a guy walk into your office whose job was to profile and capture people like this that are doing the things that they're doing, who already captured 43, put down 23 different cells and identified 225, get the Bronze Star, walk into your office and say, I'll work for free, and say, no, thank you. This is what's going on right now, because it's me, other people that have been on my team that have taught and learned and know how to tell someone's lying, especially from that faith, are not being allowed, are not being, offered to help for free. And it's ridiculous. I mean, they say that you can't really identify these guys. There are things that we do, that we did in Iraq, that we were able to tell who certain people were and certain things that they did that we could tell. We had interpreters that were from different areas, and like she was saying, there are different dialects.
Mike, let me ask you a question, because one thing that has become crystal clear to me, I'm so sick and tired of hearing idiot politicians like Obama and Lynch yammer on about how great all these Muslims are, but when it comes down to actual cooperation, there was an interview. We've got an interview with an FBI expert who has said that since 9/11, the Muslim community has been virtually zero help in producing any leads whatsoever to extremists within their communities, or jihadists. Let me use the term jihadists, meaning people who are ready to go and kill. And so it begs the question, then, if they are not willing to help law enforcement root out the jihadists in their midst, those who are literally ready to kill, then they're protecting them and perhaps even endorsing the activities.
Well, this is a simple thing. I mean, first of all, in a mosque, and your guest knows that, females aren't going to be walking around inside of one, but, the Quran states that you're one of them or you're not. So if the Quran states lying with, he may be a Christian or a Jew. Beat up your woman, throw in a corner, all these little things that are in there in the Quran, they're supposed in the book of love. But when it states that, you must have, hate for your enemies in your heart, and then you can lie, that's okay then. But you cannot lie just to lie. And if they were to actually give an interview, and you won't see, I think I've seen maybe one imam ever talk, and it was kind of amazing. Most of them shut up. Most of them won't answer questions. Most of them won't allow an interview. Because if they actually come out and say these guys did something that's wrong, even though in the Quran it does state that you should, kill all non-believers, at some point there's going to be a 12th imam and the world's going to go up and only 1/3 is going to be left to remain. So they can't come out and say, no, we don't know anything about it, unless they're part of the group and they're going to say lie. So, if you're a non-believer and you talk to one of these guys, they're either going to lie to you or they're not going to talk to you. If you're a believer, then they're going to tell you the truth, but then you're not going to tell us the truth, because why would you tell us? Then we know where to go. And the fact that there were several more people that helped these guys, that were, this guy and this woman, tells you that there's more going on, there's more people out here, and they need more people to do what my team used to do. And, start talking and start letting us do what we do. Not tell us they don't need us, because right now, we're at war here. And I've been saying this for 12 years since I got back from Iraq. They're going to be coming. They're going to have babies here. They're going to grow them here. And they're going to do all kinds of things. that people will never understand because they're not used to seeing what happens over there in that world. But they're slowly bringing it here. And when the president, when a sheriff, or when anybody in the community says they're doing everything they can, okay, then tell me why I'm not working with you right now. I don't want a gun. I don't want a badge. I just want to help. And I got other guys out there that I know that do the same job that would be willing to help and just stand in the backgrounds and just look through people, look at things, do interviews. I mean, even lie detectors, we're really good at what we do. No matter what your religion is, no matter what's in your heart, there are things
Mike,
to do.
I'm coming up on a break, but I want to tell you, I appreciate your offer and hope that they will take you up on it now, because now more than ever, we absolutely need that expertise. So thank you again for your service. Christmas, can you stick around for one more segment?
No problem.
Okay, I'm going to keep you on hold.
No.
Okay. So what's your reaction to what you're hearing here?
Well, I know things are changing here in the United States. It's been changing very slowly, and I just think that we Americans need to rise. We need to speak out. If there's anything as far as the freedom of speech, First Amendment, Second Amendment.
Freedom. Hey, you are listening to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. And we're talking with Christmas, who grew up in an Islamic country, who knew one of the victims of the San Bernardino shooting and knew her story of how she had come here similarly to escape Islamic persecution as an Assyrian Christian. And Christmas, here's a question I have for you, I sort of know the answer, but I'm so perplexed at how the I don't even know what to call them, the guys in charge of the mosque. I don't know what the right term is, and I don't really care. But the guys that are in charge, they won't answer any questions. They won't be helpful.
No, they won't answer any questions that the response may be against them. They won't. They're very clever. They already know what to say and what not to say. And we need to get into their heads to know how they operate, not how Americans operate, how they operate. They are way ahead of us as far as the game plan is concerned. They know exactly what our fears are, and they're weak killers. They love to kill the weak. If you're strong, if you're forceful, they will back out. They will back off, but if you are weak, they will attack you, and they will cut you in pieces.
The next jihadis who point a weapon at Americans, I'm hoping get a .45 hollow point to the head. If they're anywhere near me, that's what's going to happen. And most of the people who I know, and I can't tell you how many Americans are ignoring the gun control agenda. They're ignoring the everything Obama's saying. I mean, have you ever heard anything so offensive as Obama? Before any facts were known whatsoever, he's yammering about gun control. Then after the facts are all known, at least I'm sure he knows a lot more than we do, he can barely bring himself in this long meandering speech to say anything about our enemies, those who've declared war on us, those who are killing in the name of a religion. And he seems so concerned about shutting up Americans from speaking the truth about this religion.
Yes. And he's on their side. It's obvious. It doesn't take a genius to figure it out. This guy is on their side. Now, we as Americans, time is an essence. We as Americans have to be diligent in our efforts to regain whatever is left of America. If they are impinging on our freedom of speech, we need to speak out. We have to speak out every single time, no matter when and no matter with whom. We have to speak out, because by not speaking out, we are taking our freedom away. Now, you tell me why. I'm an Assyrian Christian. I came here to the United States because it is a Christian country, and I wanted to be among Christians and have the freedom. I ask the listeners, why is it, if I'm a Christian, would I go to an Islamic country? Would I migrate to an Islamic country and have them force me to wear a veil, have me forced to not to have a freedom of any kind of freedom? Would I go to another country and be subjected to that kind of a living? I'm going to say no. So why is it that these really radical Muslims, they want to migrate to a Christian country, a country that they hate the churches, the synagogues, the way we dress up, the way we live, the freedom, and everything? Why is it that they want to come and live in the West?
I think that's a good question. I think it's a very good question.
An agenda. And they have an agenda. In my opinion, there's an agenda there. And they come here and they take 4 wives, and we don't know they have 4 wives. And for each wife, from each wife, they have several children, and their numbers increase. Next thing you know, just like the way it happened in Egypt and Lebanon, they're going to, and now it's happening in France. The numbers are going to increase over 20%, and they're very forceful, and they're in your face. And next thing you know, they will implement the Sharia law, and we're done. We're done. This is the time. Mr. Donnelly, I beg the listeners to be very cautious, to be diligent. We have to get back our freedom and what America used to be. It's either now or never.
Well,
Look what
one
happened
thing
in Egypt.
Oh, go ahead.
Look what happened in Egypt. Egypt was a Christian country. They brought the Muslims as immigrants. They lived there. The numbers increased, and they took over. The same thing happened in Lebanon. You know Brigitte Gabriel, Act for America. She lived in Lebanon. Same thing. She has great story about how her country, her beautiful country, was converted to an Islamic country. It used to be called the Paris of Middle East. Now it's all done. And the same thing's happening in France, same thing's happening in England, United States. We're next.
Well, it's a chilling warning, Christmas.
It's extremely scary.
No, but see, Americans, part of the reason I wanted to have you on is Americans, we don't pay attention to Egypt, not unless you're in the State Department. The average American doesn't pay attention to Ohio or, Nevada, let alone Egypt. And yet now, all of a sudden, this is on our doorstep. Now, all of a sudden, this is happening in our backyard. It's in San Bernardino. It's happening to our friends or friends of friends or people we know who are neighbors up the street. And like tonight in the Lake Arrowhead Village, they're going to have a bonfire, and they're going to pass the hat for a football player who lost his father. Here's a young boy that has lost his father, all because we couldn't keep these jihadists out of our country. One of them was born here, but the other one, we let her in. And we should have known. That's my take. Yeah. But Christmas, thank you for coming on with us. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your knowledge. And I want to give you my condolences for your friend, and ask that we keep her family in prayer. And if there is a GoFundMe to raise money for her family, if you would send me the link, we'll put that up. I'm going to try to share all of the GoFundMe links over the next week with my audience on Facebook, one a day, so that people can help out if they choose to.
Thank you, Tim, for your efforts. And we need more people like you out there on the air. And thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. And thanks for your time.
God bless you and Godspeed.
God bless.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with your calls and more. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the Tim Donnelly Show. We're going to go straight to the phones, taking your calls. 323-746-8255 or 323-746-TALK. Hey, welcome to the show. Give me your first name and city, please.
Yeah, the name is Bill Blake, and I'm in Phelan, California, just up the road here.
Hi, Bill. How are you?
Not too bad. Listen, Tim, I wrote you a very detailed email about this, and I covered it. I sent a copy over to your, I believe, Facebook page, too. So please look this up. This is very important because what I'm going to tell you is a lot more. There's a lot more happening than what I can tell you on the air. So I was really hoping to talk to your guest in the last segment, and I couldn't get through then. It's the idea that these people have been plotting in this area, especially the high desert, for a very long time, and I've got evidence of this that goes back 2 decades, more than 2 decades. And one of the theories is, and this has never been covered by anybody before, did you know, Tim, that in this area, this is the only place along with the Holy Land that has the same sort of terrain, Joshua trees, and the same sort of plants and everything that you would find in the Holy Land. I do believe that a lot of these people have gravitated toward this specific area because they see it as maybe being a substitute Holy Land in America and maybe a place even to headquarter a jihad from. And maybe to
Bill,
build a
I don't know. I don't know about all that, but I do know we had Frank Gaffney on last week on Friday, I believe, and he was talking about, and we're going to put up a link on the Tim Donnelly Show website to one of his books, but he was talking about a 50-year plan, and so this obviously goes much deeper than most people know, and people are terrified of the truth. And Obama wants to shut us up, and his attorney general wants to put people like you and Christmas and me and everyone else in jail if we speak the truth about Islam. And how can you look at this problem, this issue, this threat, without looking at the religion? That's the part I don't get. I understand that people don't want to blanket and say that every Muslim is a bad Muslim. In my video, I never said that. I said the only good jihadi is a dead jihadi, because a jihadi is someone who has declared war. Jihad is war. They've declared war on you. They've declared a holy war. They believe they have the right to kill you and your family and your friends, not because you've harmed them, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you're not a believer, and you're not a purist enough believer to their satisfaction.
Am I still on, Tim?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I heard a click and I thought I was off. But, more than that, I've been checking into the Quran, and based on what had happened to me with a series of identity thefts and real estate frauds, they also have the right, if they can't kill you or don't choose to kill you, to take your spoils and make them theirs. And there was a series of identity thefts up here in the 90s, and mine culminated in me losing my home. And they were actually trying to use my address with a passkey to my rural mailbox to get a guy into the National Air Academy down in Ontario. And I intercepted the mailer. I came home early from a job and intercepted the mailer. They probably would have gotten it if I had been out for about 2 more days. And I called the 800 number, and the women who I talked to them on a conference line, and they said that this guy spoke in a very strange cadence, and he and his father wanted to know if he got a job through the Air Academy, could he get a good wife? He wanted to get a good wife. That sounds very third world. And they did a series of manipulations, which finally culminated in them manipulating my real estate, which they had an interest in. They had the deed on it. And I lost my home and everything. And I'm a special effects guy, and I lost $250,000 worth of assets, and nobody would help me. And they recruited Americans in legal terms, like there was a mediation center in Victorville, and there was a woman there, and there was another lawyer they got. They will use an American against an American, and if they can't kill you, they will take your property, and that's a way of financially killing you.
Well, yeah. I mean, clearly, this war has many fronts, and the problem is we can't even get our leaders to. And by the way, Bill, I'm going to let you go, but I want to tell you, I appreciate you calling in, and your story may be going further in a direction that I'm not necessarily planning to go right at the moment. I'm focused a little bit more on the state and national political implications. But look, clearly there is a serious problem when you can't even get the President of the United States to spend 15 minutes in a speech on the real threat. And if you can't talk about the real threat, how in the world are you going to do anything about it that's effective? Oh, yeah, he's going to launch an airstrike. A lot of good that's going to do. Airstrikes aren't going to deal with the jihadi next door. They're not going to deal with the people who have come here with a plan and a purpose to essentially subjugate Americans and Westerners to Islam. And that's something Americans have never really known much about. And I think we're going to get to know a lot more than we ever wanted to know about Islam, about the Quran, about what the real agenda is. And I'm really disgusted by the fact that just literally days after the brutal murders at a Christmas party in San Bernardino, you can't get the mosque leaders at the mosque of the terrorist, Syed Farouk. You can't even get them to tell you give you a little bit of insight. Maybe share the fact that, hey, we are concerned about a few who are a little too zealous within our midst, and we want to turn them over to the FBI because we're good Americans and we don't want to see anything like this happen again. But they won't say that. And I find that fascinating. I'm going to let that speak for itself. I don't need to condemn them for the fact they want to remain silent. I think it speaks volumes. I don't think they want to help American law enforcement. I don't think they have any idea or any desire to be involved in doing the right thing according to American law, because I don't think they consider themselves subject to American law. They're under Sharia. And when you're under Sharia, Sharia is a geopolitical quasi, almost like a theocracy, where it supersedes the law of the land. And when you answer to a higher authority than the law in the country you've come to adopt, you're not really living in compliance or allegiance or anything to do with America. And that right there, I think we're going to find out a lot more about that. And I want to play the rest of the Obama clip because I want to spend some time going through Obama when we get back after this next break, and really, I want you to really hear him in his own words. And if we have enough time, I'm going to play my clip again of my response to Obama and Loretta Lynch, because I think Americans need to hear somebody speaking out. Anyway, we'll be right back after these messages. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. Look, I know we got Christmas music playing and the bumper music and everything, but with what happened just last week at a Christmas party, which became the San Bernardino Christmas Party Massacre, we have to stay focused on a lot of very heavy stuff. And I don't know about you, but I always root for every president after any sort of a national tragedy, an attack like 9/11 or an attack like we have had in other places. I root for the president to do well, to pull the country together. I don't care what his party is. And I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way. I want to play for you, just so you can get a feeling for some sort of a comparison between Barack Obama and another Democrat. First, let's play the first 3 minutes of Barack Obama's speech on Saturday night. If you were one of the handful of people who heard it, I apologize, but here it goes.
Good evening. On Wednesday, 14 Americans were killed as they came together to celebrate the holidays. They were taken from family and friends who loved them deeply. They were white and black, Latino and Asian, immigrants and American-born, moms and dads, daughters and sons. Each of them served their fellow citizens, and all of them were part of our American family. Tonight I want to talk with you about this tragedy, the broader threat of terrorism, and how we can keep our country safe. The FBI is still gathering the facts about what happened in San Bernardino, but here's what we know. The victims were brutally murdered and injured by one of their co-workers and his wife. So far, we have no evidence that the killers were directed by a terrorist organization overseas or that they were part of a broader conspiracy here at home. But it is clear that the two of them had gone down the dark path of radicalization, embracing a perverted interpretation of Islam that calls for war against America and the West. They had stockpiled assault weapons, ammunition, and pipe bombs. So this was an act of terrorism designed to kill innocent people. Our nation has been at war with terrorists since Al-Qaeda killed nearly 3,000 Americans on 9/11. In the process, we've hardened our defenses, from airports to financial centers to other critical infrastructure. Intelligence and law enforcement agencies have disrupted countless plots here and overseas and worked around the clock to keep us safe. Our military and counterterrorism professionals have relentlessly pursued terrorist networks overseas, disrupting safe havens in several different countries, killing Osama bin Laden, and decimating Al-Qaeda's leadership. Over the last few years, however, the terrorist threat has evolved into a new phase. As we've become better at preventing complex, multifaceted attacks like 9/11, terrorists turn to less complicated acts of violence like the mass shootings that are all too common in our society. It is this type of attack that we saw at Fort Hood in 2009, in Chattanooga earlier this year, and now in San Bernardino. And as groups like ISIL grew stronger amidst the chaos of war in Iraq and then Syria, and as the internet erases the distance between countries, we see growing efforts by terrorists to poison the minds of people like the Boston Marathon bombers and the San Bernardino killers. For 7 years, I have confronted this evolving threat each and every morning in my intelligence briefing. And since the day I took this office, I have authorized U.S. forces to take out terrorists abroad.
Okay, so there's a taste of the President of the United States. And before I pick him apart, and I've got a whole page of notes here to pick him apart, and you're welcome to join me in that endeavor at 323-746-TALK. I want to play you 3 minutes, the first 3 minutes of a speech delivered 74 years ago by another Democrat, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who, by the way, had polio, could not stand without assistance, and yet he stood and delivered this speech before the Congress of the United States, the joint session of Congress, and here it is.
Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at solicitation of Japan, still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. Indeed, 1 hour after Japanese air squadrons had commenced bombing in the American island of Oahu, the Japanese ambassador to the United States and his colleague delivered to our Secretary of State a formal reply to a recent American message. And while this reply stated that it seemed useless to continue the existing diplomatic negotiations, it contained no threat or hint of war or of armed attack. It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government has deliberately sought to deceive the United States by false statements and expressions of hope for continued peace. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. Yesterday, the Japanese government also launched an attack against Malaya.
Right there.
Last night,
I could listen to him all day, because you know what he does? First of all, he identifies the threat. He says that we were deliberately and what was his exact word? Says it was a surprise attack, but he uses the word deliberate 3 or 4 times in a 3-minute speech. He talks about this attack being deliberate, about it being planned. He gives the context of diplomatic negotiations that had broken down, but not they were not broken down to the extent there was no communication that gave him any sense of a threat, that somehow war was imminent. And he then gives you the historical context, and then he goes back and he says, look, this was a deliberate, planned attack. There can be no question about it. And there was a deliberate attempt to deceive the United States with the hope of peace. Well, you know, you could use take out the Japanese and insert Islamic jihadists, and you could talk about intelligently about the threat that we are currently facing, except we have a president whose language is so weak, it's so mealy-mouthed, it's so ridiculous. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's like he's some kind of a coward. I've never heard anything like it. He can't even call a Christmas party a Christmas party. He calls it a holiday party. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have holiday parties. You either have Christmas or Hanukkah. That's it. I'm sorry. I just said it. If you don't like it, well, write me an email and yell at me. It's okay. I'm getting all kinds of flack today. And by the way, he mentions black and white and Hispanic and Asian and all this kind of stuff. It was multicolored, blah, blah, blah. Not that he would know. It's not like he came here. He didn't mention that those who were killed were either Christians or Jews. There was not a Muslim among them. They were Christians or Jews. Interesting omission by the President of the United States. He talks about them going down the dark path of radicalism and that it's a perverted form of Islam. We've had many experts on here who say it is the goal of Islam. This is the goal of Islam, is to terrorize and take over. And that's them talking, not me. So he calls them terrorist networks instead of Islamic jihadis. He never gets into the real nature of the threat. Then he confuses people. He says ISIL instead of ISIS. They're the same thing, but when he says it, it's as if it's a foreign word. And then he talks about mass shootings as if this somehow were an extension of the lack of gun control, and that's it. It's not any different than your garden variety mass shooter, when in fact, if you dig into the root of it, as we have and we will continue to do, it couldn't be any more different. And the threat is not the weapons used, it is the mindset, the insane ideology that you have a right to kill someone because they aren't religious enough and zealous enough, and they aren't believers of your way of believing. Anyway, we'll take a quick break and come back with a whole lot more here at the Tim Donnelly Show. If you want to call in, 323-746-TALK. Well, I remember the place I was before. It was right here in sunny Southern California. What a gorgeous day it was today. I went for a great walk out in the woods and just realized how incredibly blessed we are to live in a place where it can snow one day and be 70 the next. I was out in shorts. It was awesome. And we're talking today in particular about, obviously, the San Bernardino Christmas party massacre. I don't know if it bothered any of you as much as it bothered me that Obama just never showed up. He never showed up. He could have easily flown here to San Bernardino. He could have comforted the families that lost their loved ones. When the President of the United States shows up, I don't care who he is or what you think of him, it matters. It's the office. It's the power of that office. It's the duty of that office, because these individuals were killed. We already know, because ultimately of a war that has been declared on Americans, innocent Americans, for no reason. And he can say all day long there's no evidence to connections to orders from Islamic jihadist organizations worldwide. Well, you know what? That's just BS. Obama, you're just flat out lying. The evidence was erased. They destroyed and erased their hard drives. They destroyed all their email accounts, so there was no record. They'll be able to find it at some point, I'm sure. It's just going to take some time. If the journalists who went in there didn't destroy everything of value, who knows? But they were given orders by somebody. You had the wife, this Tafshin Malik, pledging allegiance to ISIS on her Facebook account. So clearly something happened, and clearly something, this had to do with a lot more than some workplace disgruntled employees. We know that. Anybody with a brain knows that. And when we come back, I'm going to play you the reaction of your Attorney General. If you didn't catch it earlier in the show, you're going to get to hear it again. Plus, you're going to get my reaction right afterwards. But it's really astounding. I posted the video that I'm going to play you on my Facebook page. It's been shared, I don't know how many times, 450 times, and 1,000 people liked it. It's going everywhere. Why? Because I'm simply speaking the truth. But of course, whenever you do that, you get the haters. And there's one lady, I'm going to read your comment because I can't help but not read it. It's just too delicious. And it's extremely long-winded. She says, initially, Donnelly has the right to be angry that people he knows were murdered, but his message is irresponsible, and his attacks on Loretta Lynch are unfounded. All American Muslims should not be blamed, I never said they should, interrogated or punished for the horrific act of radical Islamic terrorists. Okay, stop right there. The woman's name is Andrea. Right there, it is not, this was not what you would consider, or as our guest earlier, Christmas, said, that you could even identify that they were radicalized. How would you even know? They blended right into the congregation. They prayed. Everybody thought they were just totally normal, just like everybody else. So they were Muslim adherents. They were Muslim faithful. They were Muslim fundamentalists. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the only religion where we see every single time when we go back, there is a clear connection to their so-called holy book where they can trace permission and, in fact, exhortation to commit such acts. She goes on, we don't blame all Christians when Christians extremists murder innocent people, like when the white Christian terrorist Robert Louis Deere recently attacked people at Planned Parenthood. Hey, there is no Christian jihad. The Christians aren't out there saying, go kill in the name of Christ. They're saying forgive. They're saying they preach forgiveness. They preach turning the other cheek. That's part of why, Andrea, that's why you don't see the broad-based condemnation of Christianity, even though Obama always tries to do it, because there is no one there stating, let's go kill in the name of Christ. Now, yeah, the Crusades back in the 14th century, but we've come a long way from that. And she goes on and on about Timothy McVeigh and domestic terrorism. I mean, it's a long, overly long attack, when the simple truth is right before your very eyes. We're going to play you Loretta Lynch, Attorney General, in her own words, and my reply, and let you be the judge. We'll be right back after this. After the break, I have it written down here, but Iran, in the midst of trying to negotiate a deal that Obama wants to give them the right to build a nuclear weapon within 10 years, they tested a missile that, according to the UN sanctions, they're not even supposed to have. They tested a mid-range intercontinental ballistic missile in late November. This was, you might have heard it at the bottom of the hour in the newsfeed. This is the regime that swears death to America, and we're going to not only give them the ability to build a nuclear weapon, we're going to look the other way while they test a missile to deliver it. And a mid-range missile like that could reach Israel easily and wipe them off the face of the earth, our ally. This should tell you everything you need to know about this president, how he reacts and responds to that. But I want, before the break, I played you a little bit of Obama's speech. I'm not going to torture you with how horrible it truly was, and how he went on ad nauseum to lecture Americans on why we need common sense gun control. We have like 25,000 laws. Are you saying all of them are nonsense? Or is the 25,000 laws we currently have, is that your common sense gun control? Because here's the dirty little secret that no politician will tell you. We can't make you safe. Yeah, I can say it. I'm not a politician. Even when I was supposed to be a politician, I wasn't a politician. The government can't protect you. You're on your own. They can't do anything about it. Obama's made it clear he will not do anything about it. That's why he doesn't want to come out here and look the San Bernardino Christmas party massacre victims in the eye. He doesn't want to look. He does not want to look the families in the eye. And by the way, we need to surround those families in prayer. And we're gonna bring you on our Facebook page each day one of the GoFundMe pages so that you can contribute as you feel led to help out. Hundreds of thousands of dollars have already been raised by amazing and generous people. But I want to play you Loretta Lynch, our Attorney General, and her reaction. She wants to prosecute you if you speak the truth about Islam. Check this out.
The rise of the internet, the ability of people to issue hateful speech of all types from the anonymity of a screen is something that increases that rhetoric. Now, obviously, this is a country that is based on free speech, but when it edges towards violence, when we see the potential for someone lifting that mantle of anti-Muslim rhetoric, or, as we saw after 9/11, violence directed at individuals who may not even be Muslims but may be perceived to be Muslims. And they will suffer just as well, just as much. When we see that, we will take action.
I don't know if that offends you as much as it offended me. The very idea that a sworn constitutional officer, someone who swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that she would consider you the enemy. You're the problem. You're the threat. And if you say words she doesn't like, she's going to use the power of her office, the power entrusted to her, to intimidate, possibly arrest and incarcerate you. I don't know if I'm the first American who is calling for her to resign, but I don't care that she walked back the statements today after she got blowback from people like me all across the country, talk show hosts and commentators and people who just love freedom told her to F off and in no uncertain terms. I toned it down a little bit, but I want to play you the video that I put out in response to her tyranny.
Former California State Assemblyman Tim Donnelly here with an important message for Attorney General Loretta Lynch. You've threatened to prosecute Americans for speaking the truth about the Islamic supremacists who killed 14 Americans last Tuesday, instead of actually targeting the jihadis who have threatened to kill more. You're not an attorney general. You're an embarrassment. When you became attorney general, you swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and protect it from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And instead, you're using the power entrusted to you by the people to threaten the natural, civil, and constitutional rights of countless Americans. You don't uphold the rule of law. You're a threat to it. I'm not sure if you're an idiot or you're deliberately undermining the security of the United States. Whichever it is, you violated your oath. I don't know how you got this job, whether it was your anti-American ideology or your skin color or both. But I'm going to tell you one thing. We, the people of these United States, refuse to be intimidated by you. You work for us. You rule at our consent, not the other way around. Your politically correct assault on free speech has empowered our enemies. Neither you nor Obama can identify the true nature of the evil, Islamic extremism, that claimed lives of 14 innocent Americans, including some of my neighbors. So I don't expect you to be able to do anything about it. But this didn't happen in New York or Los Angeles. It happened in my backyard. So it's deeply personal. The people of my community are good and decent people, and they can't understand why you and Obama could go to Charleston, where you've turned your back on the victims of the San Bernardino Christmas party massacre. Several of the victims are from my own community, a tiny little mountain town in the San Bernardino Mountains. One man, Michael Wetzel, left behind 6 children. He went to school with one of my sons. He went to church with some of my friends. He coached soccer in a league administered by my wife. Everybody knows everybody in this community. More and more of us are beginning to question why the followers of the religion of peace have declared war on innocent Americans. We can't understand why you and Obama had no problem speaking out against the evil of a disturbed lone racist after 9 black Americans were murdered, but you can't even say a word about radical Islamists. Obama didn't ask for people to be patient. He didn't advocate that anyone wait for the facts to come out after Charleston. He didn't ask citizens to reserve judgment. In fact, with his rhetoric, he encouraged more hate. And you didn't threaten to prosecute those who threatened violence against Southern Americans because it didn't fit your political agenda. But you protect the mosques who protect the jihadis. If you were an American who loved this country, you'd put the mosques on notice. You'd tell them, if you don't turn over the extremists and the jihadists within your midst, then we'll set the FBI on you. We'll turn your mosques upside down. We'll make your lives a living hell until you rat out those who have declared war on America. But instead, you threaten the family and friends of the victims of your failure to identify and prosecute those who've sworn to kill anyone who doesn't pledge allegiance to their insane jihad. Well, I'm putting you on notice. If you don't go after the Islamic jihadis next door, we will. The only good jihadi is a dead jihadi. And the next jihadi to rear his or her ugly head in my backyard and point a weapon at me and my friends will get a 45 hollow point between the eyes. So if by refusing to be the next victim in the war the Islamic jihadis have declared on us somehow makes me an advocate of violence, then bring it on. Come and arrest me. I'm not hard to find. And then you can explain to the American people why we are the target of your wrath, not the murderous bastards who slaughter the innocents, even at a Christmas party, all in the name of the religion of peace. I'm former California State Assemblyman Tim Donnelly. Godspeed.
Well, since I said it, I guess I can't say it any better than the video I recorded. It's up at timdonnellyshow.com if you want to share it. It's also on our Facebook page. Look, this is the time. I want to say one thing. You know what we do, Loretta Lynch? I don't call you Attorney General because you need to resign. You need to give that job to somebody who has respect for the law and the Constitution. For you to come after our First Amendment, Obama to come after our Second Amendment is I promised myself I was not going to cuss, so I'm not going to cuss. But I can't think of any other words. And the words that are coming in my head, I can't say on air. So just bear with me. We talk. That's what we do. We use words. We speak out against evil. And our government would like to silence us while they empower those who have sworn to kill us because of our lack of religion, because we don't follow their twisted, insane jihad. They think they have a right to slaughter innocent people. That doesn't get Obama riled up. If you heard his speech, and we'll probably play you a little bit of that tomorrow. I'm going to deconstruct it further because it is just such a masterpiece of exactly how a president should never, ever speak. But When we come back, we'll take your calls. Should you wish to get in before the show expires for the day. 323-746-TALK. That's our number.
Under President Obama and Secretary Clinton, the world is more dangerous, and America is less safe. If I'm elected to serve as Commander-in-Chief, we won't cower in the face of evil. America will lead. We'll rebuild our military. We'll kill the terrorists. And every Islamic militant will know, if you wage jihad against us, you're signing your death warrant. And under no circumstances will I ever apologize for America. I'm Ted Cruz, and I approve this message.
You gotta love that. You gotta love Ted Cruz. You gotta love Donald Trump. They're out there speaking the truth, and surprise, surprise, what happens? They keep going up in the polls. Americans like leadership, and it's nice to see some individuals actually leading for a change. It's nice to see courage. And the bottom line is, if they're afraid to say it during the campaign, it's like dating. If they ain't doing it now, it ain't going to happen after the wedding. I can tell you that right now. So it's very good to know that Ted Cruz, Donald Trump are both out there pumping up the volume. That was a great ad. I like the way he said, if they declare jihad on us, they have signed their death warrant. And that's how it should be. Can you imagine Obama saying those words? Can you imagine Obama saying, and note, I don't call him President Obama anymore. He is not my president. After 7.5 years, I'm done. I don't know who he has sworn allegiance to, but it ain't us. It ain't the Constitution of the United States. Whether or not he is a Muslim, I don't know. But more and more evidence seems to indicate, given his incredible inability to do anything but blame Americans for what the jihadists have done. Blame Americans and their guns. Blame Americans and their bitter clinging to religion and guns. Blame Americans every single time, instead of pointing at the Islamic fundamentalists who supported, who encouraged, and who quietly assented to the jihadists who murdered, who slaughtered in cold blood innocent Americans who had harmed no one. And you know, if you've read any of the stories, this Syed Farouk hated Jews, hated Israel. And one of the victims, Nicholas, he's got some Greek name I can't quite pronounce, but let's just call him Nick. He got into an altercation. I read it in a publication over the weekend. He was demanding that Nick understand and accept that Islam was the religion of peace. And so, in order to prove to him that Islam was the religion of peace, he murdered him and 13 other Americans. Think about that. His big argument with him was over the fact that Nick called him out on the fact that why was it that so many of these murders, these terrorist acts, these jihadist acts have been committed in the name of Islam. But in order to end the discussion and the argument, he killed him. So Barack Obama can sit around and wonder what the motivation was. The media can sit around and wonder what the motivation was. But to me, it's crystal clear. You have somebody who bought into an ideology of hate, whose wife had been radicalized, who allowed himself to, who threw away their 6-month-old child in order to commit mass murder in the name of Allah. And I'm sorry that this is what we have to talk about as everyone's out Christmas shopping. But the bottom line is, you need to understand it, and we will continue to educate you. We will inform you, educate, so that you can engage. And I hope and I pray that you will never have to engage in the ultimate battle. But if it comes to that, if you've been a listener to this show, you will understand what your role is as a frontline soldier in the war that has been declared on you. Thanks to Chief Engineer Sean McNeil, all of our sponsors, and you. God bless you and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show out.